Please welcome Heidi Taylor.
Would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land that we're meeting on today and pay my respects to the Noongar people and pay my respects to their elders, their past, present and emerging. And thank you so much for the welcome to country this morning from Walter and family. I want to talk to you today about two things. One is about marine debris, the Australian Marine Debris Initiative, and how we've used data that's been collected from cleanups in informing policy change and changes in industry. But I also want to throw another concept out there to you about why some of these strategies that are being pushed out now more than ever aren't working, and how we can tweak them slightly to get the outcomes that we want. So here we are starting off. Just for those that have never heard of Tangaroa Blue before, we are a registered charity. We're Australia-wide now. We focus on marine debris only. Tangaroa is a Polynesian word for the god of the ocean, and one of his laws are, if you look after me, I look after you. And as a diving instructor, that was resonated with me a lot. We created the Australian Marine Debris Initiative, which is a national platform of community, industry and government all working on ways to remove and prevent marine debris and plastic pollution. Just recently we won a 5-year tender through the federal government to run marine debris services across the whole of the Great Barrier Reef. For a small community group that started in the southwest corner of WA, going for a federal government tender for $5 million was an experience that we would never have thought that we were able to achieve. It's been a really steep learning curve, but we're very excited about that, and we've called that project Reef Clean. And we acknowledge every single person, every single organisation and agency that have supported us along the way in 15 years since we've been talking about marine debris. And back then, when we started talking about this issue, people used to look at me and say, why have you got a problem with driftwood? We've come a long way since then. Most people now know we have plastics in the ocean, so the awareness on this issue has risen significantly. So where are we at with this issue? Somewhere between 8 and 15 million tonnes we know is entering the world's oceans every year. Now we have a problem in that this is going to continue to increase because of two things. One, the world's population keeps getting bigger, and so therefore we keep creating more waste. So even if by percentage the same amount is always going into the ocean, the volume will be more because there's more people and more waste being generated. As mentioned, we know that plastic has been found in the very deepest of our depths of the ocean layer, in the Heidi layer, and there's been some kind of estimate of up to 40,000 pieces of plastic per square kilometre being found in our oceans. So it is quite a dire situation, one that we never thought as a human race that we would be able to impact something so big as the oceans that covered 2/3 of our planet. However, it's not all bad news, because we have a raft and a whole army of people wanting to do something about it. And in 2016 census, it was just under 20% of people volunteer their time, not just for the environment, but for causes that are passionate to them. And it means that people are willing to get out there and make their communities better, whether it's the environment or whether it's another issue that connects them. And I think that this is an area that we can all expand on, because we all have networks and we can bring people in. The two things out of the census that we learnt about volunteering is that people want to do something that's meaningful, and they want it to be flexible enough that they can fit it into our varied lifestyles. So that's one thing that we need to think about when we're trying to engage volunteers in our organisations. So the Australian Marine Debris Initiative was set up as a platform that not only removed what was already out there, because we know there's plenty of stuff out there, and we know that every time we go to the beach or the creek or the river, there's more stuff there. So it is a continuing process that we're going to have to do. But how can we actually stop it at the source? And so the platform goes through 6 major or main steps. And the first one is, of course, the removal. And this is a picture from the work that we do up in Cape York with our land and sea rangers up in the communities there, where we're removing up to 1 tonne per kilometre. Once we remove it, we separate, we sort, we collect. Some of you have probably been part of this process. And we have a database that it gets fed into that has about 140 categories. Now, some people talk a little bit about databases and they go, well, why don't we just have one database about plastics? One thing to consider is that data has to be collected to answer a certain question. And our question is, where is it from and how do we stop it? So we need to identify the source. So that's why the database is created in the way that it is. It gets fed into either the online portal, or for those that are doing data collection with our new app, you can do it out in the field. We use the data to try and track back to the source, and then we figure out the right stakeholders that we have to have at the table to find a solution. Now, once those source reduction plans are then implemented, we do need to continue our cleanups and our data collection to measure whether those source reduction plans have actually worked or not. And then we can continue this process by moving on to the next item. So we have now our AMDI database that's just kicked over 14.5 million data points. Now, that's over 378,000 volunteer hours that have contributed to that. There's over 3,000 cleanup sites across the country, and there's almost 17,000 cleanup events that have been registered. Now, these are not Tangaroa Blue cleanup events. Some of them are, but we work with over 1,100 community groups, organisations, other agencies, and other bodies, the Land and Sea Rangers, school groups, who are all contributing into this one database that Tangaroa Blue just is hosting. So we're just another partner in the AMDI platform. So this is a collaboration, and this is what we can do when we work together. It is the biggest marine debris database in the Southern Hemisphere and one of the biggest in the world that's been done by citizen scientists. So one of the first things that we find when we look at the data is that there is no one thing that will solve this issue. Where we go regionally around Australia, marine debris means something different. So the first photo up here is from the Yarra River in Port Phillip Bay in Melbourne. We did a clean up there and we pulled out 80 O-bikes. Now, O-bikes are the rental bikes that you leave. Currently, it's not happening in Melbourne anymore. Clearly, the system wasn't really right for down there. But that was an issue that we identified through, obviously, the data. The next one up here, this is from Greta Beach on Christmas Island, where the polystyrene balls were so thick it was like collecting snow. Now, the majority of the debris from on those beaches there comes from overseas. It's not Australian debris or from the local community. If we look down the bottom here, this is Port Stephens, just north of Sydney. There was a shipping accident there last year where about 90 shipping containers fell over the side. 2 of them breached open immediately, and we started to see weird things wash up. This particular beach got Taiwanese tea and empty cream bottles. Another beach got yoga mats, and there was even four-wheel drive tyres washing up on a third beach. The problem is that only a few of those containers have been removed, which means that they will continue to breach open wherever they are and start to unleash these kind of items as they get into the water. And then this bottom one here is from Warrnambool Beach, which is down in Victoria, and they collected 16,000 cotton bud sticks over 2 years. This beach is very close to the waste treatment plant pipe that opens up, and so we seem to have this problem where people think that cotton bud sticks can get flushed down the toilet. They're very, very thin, and they actually go straight through the filters of the waste treatment plant. Now, the reason that I took you on a quick trip around Australia is to show that there is no one solution. Each of these issues are a different problem that started from a different source. And so we do need that data to identify exactly what we're trying to stop. The other thing is that some of these items could be at different types of locations for different reasons as well. So just because you find the solution for a particular item at a particular location, it may not translate across the board. So the data is really important to be able to help us identify the source. Now, what is consistent across the board is our number one issue is plastics. And more than 75% of rubbish that we're finding in our environment is made up of some sort of plastic. And we know the problem with plastic is that it never goes away. It just continually fragments and breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces. And just because you can't see it with your eye anymore doesn't mean it's miraculously gone away. The smaller it gets, the more time consuming and expensive it is to remove, and the more species can be impacted by it as well. So it becomes a bigger problem, which is why we say it breaks up and not down. So WAA Stats for the last 2 years, we just wanted to pull out our top 10 items for you to see what's been flagging in the data. And those hard plastic remnants, or those little bits of who knows what that are continually breaking up, are the #1 item that we're finding. And then cigarette butts. So for me, that's a really interesting statement, because you've got something that's remnant that could be coming from far away, plus a local litter item in your #1 and 2 items. So we have issues in WA where we're getting stuff that are coming from offshore sources, but we also have some local litter issues as well. So what needs to change? When we identify the source, we can get the right people at the table. We need to figure out, do we need to change the design of that item? Is it a practice or the way that it's used? Do we need more education and awareness around it? Is it a compliance issue, a change in infrastructure, or a combination of those? Again, it's not going to be one simple solution all the time, and as you transition through your source reduction plan, you may need to bring in different ones of these as you go along. There was a great school group in Bundaberg who did a project in their schoolyard where they were looking at litter in the schoolyard. And after doing an audit in the schoolyard, they decided that they needed more bins, and they convinced the school to get some more bins out. But they didn't just leave it there, which is where we fail a lot of the time with these processes. They then did some audits, and they kept moving the bins and doing audits until they found the right place for the bin to go. So just because you put a bin there doesn't mean people are going to use it correctly, or it might not be in the right location. So it's important that we continue to measure those processes. So I'd like to give you some feedback now of how we've used the data in scales. So first of all, at an international level, through the Sustainable Development Goals, we've been working on this international source debris and feeding that up through the government federal departments. And we were actually even included in DFAT's report that went out on how Australia is meeting their sustainability goals that came out last year. So it's been acknowledged as a citizen science platform to help meet those goals, and we have Sustainability Development Goal number 14, Life Underwater, that actually has a marine debris target associated with it, and of course 17, which is all working together to meet the goals as well. So that's at an international scale. At a national scale, I wanted to tell you a little story from Cape York, where we've been working up there for about 8 years now. And on one particular beach, we found an unusual finding a couple of years ago. We record the barcodes of items because the first 3 numbers on a barcode tell you where it was manufactured. It doesn't necessarily tell you where it was sold or where it was lost, but where it was manufactured. And we know pretty well what foreign water bottle brands that we're going to find across Cape York, because we've been recording this for a really long time. We'd never seen this brand before. It's a Vietnamese water bottle brand called Thatch Bitch, but I'm sure that's not how the Vietnamese say it. And as you can clearly see, these haven't floated from Vietnam. They look pretty new, labels are on. You can see that they still have no algal growth on them, and in fact the expiry date was 12 months into the future. We'd never seen this brand before, and we found 500 on a remote Cape York beach in one cleanup. So we fed that information through to our partners through Department of Biosecurity, and they actually flicked it across to Border Force. And Border Force gave us a call and said, can you give us a spatial representation of where you found this brand and in how many and when? And they did some ocean modelling and put some other information that they had to hand together and sent out a Border Force vessel into the middle of the Coral Sea. And you won't guess what they found. An illegal fleet of fishing vessels from Vietnam. So you never know where the data can be used. Also at a national scale, we've been trying to work with the Bureau of Meteorology for a number of years on this. So they released these weather balloons, and there was about 108 of them being released every day from around Australia. And we weren't finding them like this, we were finding little bits of them like that. And when we finally discovered that that was that in numerous items or breaking up, we collected data on that and we tried to engage with the Bureau. They weren't too interested in talking to us for about 2 years, so we released a scientific paper in an international journal. And they called us within 24 hours. Anyway, after discussions, consultations, whatever you want to call it, they decided that they were going to change the polystyrene that was on the inside of this silver lining to cardboard. But they didn't tell us about that. But what we did notice is that when we started to look at the data from 2015 to 16, we saw this phenomenal drop in the amount of these polystyrene foams that we were finding, and we didn't know why. And we finally found out a couple of years later that they had changed at this point in time from polystyrene to cardboard, and you can see the significant drop in polystyrene fragments that we were finding from the weather balloons. Obviously, there's still a lot of items that are ending up in the environment. They're releasing about 85 a day now from around Australia. But that's a reduction, and we hope with new technologies, the need for these weather balloons continues to get reduced. In Port Phillip Bay, we've been working at a catchment scale where we worked with 11 different councils all together on local litter issues with the community. They used their data to identify the thing that they wanted to tackle, and we gave them support in rolling out projects such as cigarette butt projects, straw projects, fishing line projects, and each of those projects was able to get an outcome engaging the community in proactively working with councils and other stakeholders to reduce debris. Very proud in WA to see that the town of Cottesloe has been able to put a ban on helium balloons being released, and we're excited that there was a councillor, Sandra, who was at one of our workshops in Cottesloe, I think in 2015, and she took away this idea of being able to ban balloons from that workshop, and a few years later managed to get that over the line. So at a local government level, the data can be used. The wonderful community down in Augusta Margaret River, where we actually managed to start Tangaroa Blue so many years ago, got a grant where they were able to create a wash trailer, which goes to the markets where people can borrow a reusable cup at the markets and then get it washed and reuse it. So you can see just from one event at the markets how many single-use items have been reduced. So again, really localised projects that can be done. And one of the ones that I'm really proud of is engaging with the plastics industry on ways to reduce plastic resin pellets from releasing from the factories and the transportation logistic companies. So noodles, or plastic resin pellets, the raw form of plastic, you use them to create all kind of other plastic items, and we started discovering them in the southwest around 2007. This is why they're ending up in your environment, because when they get spilled, quite often they're not getting cleaned up and they enter the stormwater and then they float. They look like fish eggs, so anything will eat a fish will eat a noodle. And we were able to get some funding through the Victorian State Government to bring Operation Clean Sweep from the US to Australia. And the program is an industry-led program that looks at zero pellet loss. And it's been an interesting collaboration to get this up and running. We even held a noodle hunt in February under the Westgate Bridge. We had 52 members of the industry come and hunt for noodles with us. We were excited about this because they didn't want to talk to us about this issue before, and now they're hunting for noodles with us. They didn't think they were going to find any. I did tell them I wasn't going to take them to a location that there wasn't going to be any there. So we ended up getting about 1,500 in 20 minutes. So they were all really shocked. And again, this is an example of why this loss is occurring. And we work across other industry sectors as well, and one of them is with our partner called We Refill, and they work in reducing single-use water bottles at events. And at Blues Fest, which is one of the biggest music festivals in Australia, they managed to be able to go back of house completely plastic water bottle free this year. It saved over 24,000 single-use water bottles that just didn't get bought by providing refill stations. And front of house, they did another 40-odd thousand where people could buy a 5-day pass for $10 and get unlimited refills from chilled water, sparkling water, and all filtered water. So it was about making it easy. I know sparkling, right? Yeah. Decadent. And obviously you've got a carbon offset here as well. And we had Jack Johnson come and refill his bottle. He was really excited. He's one of our friends. So this is where I wanted to transition to the second part of my talk, which is about why some things don't work. And I want to use the We Refill business model as an example. And the founder of We Refill is this guy here called Brett, who's a very interesting person to speak to. His mind works in some pretty wild ways. And I want to share with you what he's been trying to develop in the industry to transition away from single-use water bottles. So if we look at single-use plastic water bottles, it's a massive industry. And we spend $2 billion on water bottles back in 2015. This is just increasing. It's a bit crazy. Water has to be pumped out of the ground. That has aquifer issues there. We have packaging, transportation, and then chilling it before it actually gets to us. We drink it, or some of it, and then this thing is left in the environment for forever. And we import water from all over the planet, which is just crazy when our tap water is just fine. So the whole concept has been a marketing concept that we've all been brainwashed that we need to drink bottled water. So what are we buying when we buy bottled water? We buy something that's cold, okay? We generally don't go into a cafe and buy warm water off the shelf to drink. We buy it because it's cold. We buy it because we think it tastes better. It's convenient. There's an image around it. And we see a health benefit, whether that's a hydration health benefit or whether we think that there's another benefit. So that's what we're buying when we buy a cold water bottle. And in a lot of cases, we're trying to replace it when we want to go plastic water bottle free. We need to replace it because people still need water. We have a legal obligation to provide water. And we're replacing it with different things. So here's some examples. Here we have the old bubbler. Can you put your hand up if you're confident drinking out of bubbler? Sometimes, right? Come on, let's be honest. All right. This one was at a market venue, which we thought was quite interesting. We're not sure who the drinking water was for that one. And then we have these single refill units that go to events as well that clearly have some issues as well. So there's some examples of what we're replacing it with. Or even worse. This is at a festival that we were at in Victoria earlier this year. And this event went plastic water bottle free, and that's what they replaced it with. And we wonder why people still bring single-use water bottles, right? So how do we get the right outcome that we want when we want to phase out or we want to transition from single-use? We've got 3 strategies I want to walk you through. So strategy 1 is the ban. We just say no more, this event or this venue is going to go plastic water bottle free. There's a complete ban in place. So I want us to look at this from an environmental impact with human health and with an economic impact. So for the environment, if we go plastic water bottle free, we have no plastic bottle waste, so good for the environment. We have a reduction in carbon footprint of the water bottle and the water itself getting there, refrigeration, all of that stuff. So the environment, we've got big ticks. If we look at the human health impact, we've removed cold water, which of course in those 42-degree festival days is not good. We have OH&S requirements. In some of those festivals, you have to stop work at a certain temperature. Not when you're partying, you don't. There's a hygiene issue, as you can see here, and the quality of the water. And some of the testing that has been done in these tanks that they provide have 8 times the chlorination of normal town water. Why? Because you don't want people having diarrhea en masse at a festival, right? So we've got crosses all the way down the board there for the human impact. And then we think about the venue and the economic impact. These guys make money out of selling water, and they're on a very tight margin. So if we think about taking away this revenue stream, it's going to impact the festival and the event. So we have a big cross there. So banning is not going to be a long-term solution because there's too many bad outcomes there. If we go to strategy 2, which is the phase out, we have both bottled water and an alternative. Is that any better? Well, from an environmental impact, we have less waste than if we had a full blanket with water bottles, so we'll go half. Spring water we're still using. We have those issues with the aquifer. And we're still having to transport, store and refrigerate those single-use water bottles that do come in. So we're still not quite there with the environmental impact and outcomes. For human health, we still have cold water available, which is great. So we are addressing OH&S requirements, and this will translate into less harm, especially in those really hot summers. The venue isn't losing as much as they would have, so we're only going to give them a half there. So again, we're transitioning, but we're still not right there with our outcomes. This is a photo from a particular festival that tried to go half and half, and they bought so many plastic water bottles because they didn't know how many they were going to have to give out. This is all out-of-date water now, which is even worse than at least having it and selling it, because now it didn't even get drank. So let's look at strategy 3, which is the replacement. We need to replace what people were buying. So we have something that provides cold water, filtered water, hygiene, convenience, all of those things that we were buying when we bought the water bottle. So now we have no plastic water bottle waste, we have no spring water, and we have less transport footprint because we're actually filtering at source the tap water. So we're back onto our 3 ticks for the environment. Our human impact, we have cold water available, we've met our OH&S requirements, and we have less harm. So we're getting ticks down the line there as well. And our economic impact, now we need the revenue to be shifted. So instead of making money from selling single-use water bottles, let's make money from doing something else. To rent units, you can put the cost associated with that, or buying units, you can put the cost associated with that on the ticket price. It equates to about $2 extra for people to go blanket across a 50,000 person festival. So it's not a lot of money we're talking about. You can sell merchandise like your reusable water bottles, or these guys have collapsible cups that stick in your pocket, so you've got a merchandise revenue stream. And you can see that there's screens up here. So now you get to sell advertising and marketing. So now you've offset the economics that the event was going to get from single-use water bottles and transitioned it so that they don't lose any money. So now we have a positive economic impact as well. And this is how you shift single-use plastic economy, and not just about banning a water bottle. Does that make sense? Awesome. So this is Brets' concept. He doesn't like public speaking, and he's not very good at explaining it because he gets very excited. So this is my first attempt at explaining his concept. I want to know whether you guys got that or not. Okay. He'll be so pleased. Okay, so now you can see that we have 3 streams that we need to evaluate, all of our environmental strategies to reduce single-use plastics. We want to look at it because the environmental driver is what drives us. That's why we're here. But we also need to take into account the human impacts that are associated with that and the economic stream so that we can have a long-term sustainable shift that remains shifted. So in the field, a couple of learnings that we had. The first one was, and this is at a heavy metal festival in Victoria. These guys were awesome. And you can see they've got their little cups that match their uniforms. So hydration management plan is how we want to be talking about providing water. Only about 30% of festival patrons actually wanted to carry a water bottle because it's bulky. You know? So having something that's easy for them to drink from, that's not bulky, is going to make it easier for them to do the right thing and transition. People actually drink more water than they drink from a cup. So they come up with a cup, they drink the cup, they have another cup, they drink that, and they fold it away. If you have a water bottle, you tend not to drink the whole thing. 600 mils is too much for someone generally to drink in one go. We've been told that's how much we should buy. And as soon as a single-use water bottle is warm, it has 0 perceived value. So those of you that have done cleanups, how many water bottles have you found that still have water in them? They've just spent $3.50 to $6 on it and they've thrown away. Why? Because it's not cold anymore. So if we give them what they can drink, which is cold in that space, you'll find you would have less of that water wastage as well. And this gives us the whole of community benefit: sustainability, human, and economic. I'm going to give a shameless plug. We've got the WA beach cleanup happening. It's the 19th and the 20th of October. This is the 15th year that we've run this event. It started off as the Cape to Cape beach cleanup. Was there anybody there when it was the Cape to Cape Beach cleanup? Yay, thank you. And then it went to the Southwest Beach cleanup, and now it's the WA Beach cleanup. So we're inviting people to register their beach, get out there on the weekend somewhere, somehow, or a creek or a river if you don't have a beach. Do the data for us and send that in. And if you zip us an email, it's all on our website. We'll send you a cleanup kit as well. And you can contribute that to that database. So we really thank everyone for the opportunity to do that. And I just wanted to finish off by saying Tangaroa Blue was born at Ellensbrook Beach in the southwest corner near Margaret River in 2004. And it was born out of frustration of what we were seeing in the Cape to Cape National Park down there. And I happened to be surrounded by some pretty amazing people that decided that they wanted to join me on a journey. What a journey. 15 years later, we run a national program on marine debris. I get invited to come and talk to events like this with amazing, passionate people. And I just want to give a shout out to those people that were there right at the beginning that helped get us to where we are today. And the state NRM body in Western Australia gave us some funding a couple of years ago now to build our capacity. And that enabled us to put on a full-time database person. Christopher Lukes from Coast West, who gave us our very first grant back in the early 2006, I think it was, for the Cape to Cape Beach cleanup, and has been a supporter from us since then. There's some volunteers here who are still involved since the first cleanup, as the useful, Blair. And that transition of having those core people that were with us at the beginning all the way through and still involved with us is how we've been able to do what we're doing. And I just want to really thank everyone that supported us. We are making a difference. We're not cleaning up, we're stopping at the source. You guys aren't rubbish collectors if you're out there doing this. You're actually part of the Marine Debris CSI team, and you're changing policy and legislation and the way people do business. And you should be all so proud of that, and I thank you for being on this journey with me.